So be honest, how many of y'all saw the gorilla? Okay. Yeah, some of y'all seen the video before. I remember the first time I watched it, I was so excited that I had gotten it right, that it was 15 passes. I never saw the gorilla. So I tested it on Tina yesterday, and she didn't see the gorilla either. So I said, I think it's going to work. And I hope all this makes sense at the end, and it kind of ties into what I'm trying to say, because right now y'all are probably thinking, what's this got to do with what motivates us to share the gospel? And if it doesn't work and it doesn't tie in, I'll tell you how Brian relates to this and some other people that's in law enforcement or lawyers that just retract that from your memory. You know, I remember how many times I've been in trial and an attorney would say something and somebody would object and the judge would sustain it and say, hey, retract that from your memory, wipe that off the record. And I was like, but I've already heard it. I've already heard that you said that he pulled the trigger, you know. And he would say, retract that from your memory. So if this doesn't go well, retract this from your memory. So basically what I was trying to accomplish here is so often we go through our day and there's a gorilla right in front of us. There's a person in need. There's a person who just needs to be told that you love them. There's a person that needs your help, and we never see them. Because we're so focused on everything else that's going on in life, where we got to be next, what we got to do that night when we get home, how many sports events we got to take our children to, that we never see the gorilla in the room. So this week's title is What Motivates Us to Share the Gospel? See, most of us were motivated by a couple of things, or one major thing. Does anybody want to take a gamble at what we are motivated by? Money. Number one answer, right? Money. Because we'll do almost anything for $1, right? I will. I'm not ashamed to say it. Followed closely behind probably our stuff and things, because we love our stuff and things, but you have to have money to buy those stuff and things. But are we motivated by love? See, God created us out of love for the purpose of sharing His love. First and foremost, to love Him, and then to love others. See, in P27, I can promise you this, at the Baseball Academy, we have 72 teenage boys that makes you want to scream and holler sometimes. I promise you I would not be working with this many young men, maybe no young men, if I didn't truly love these guys. Because it is a daunting task, to say the least. Matter of fact, Tina and I kind of had met the neighbors last night, just met them literally 5 minutes. They pulled in with a U-Haul. We already introduced ourselves and already had plans to get together with them last night, and then she ends up in the emergency room with one of the players, and it's just never ending. But I can promise you, if we didn't love them and Tina didn't love them, she would not spend 3 or 4 hours at the emergency room last night, which happens about once a week, unfortunately. But this week was an awesome week. I actually got to share the gospel with 72 boys at one time, and it just kind of fell into place because that was not the plan. The plan was every Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock, I teach a character development class with these baseball players, about 45 minutes long. We really talk to them about morals and integrity and decision-making and the 3 C's, which is clean creates character. And in between clean and character, we put in whatever. Clean mind, clean heart creates character. Clean apartment creates character. Clean weight room, clean baseball facility, clean creates character, because most of them don't know how to clean anything. So this last weekend, Tina and I caught wind that some of these guys were not abiding by curfew. So at midnight on Friday and Saturday nights, their curfew, they have to be in their apartment by midnight, and I cannot stay up to midnight to catch them. So I set my clock, and I woke up at 12:30, and we got up, made our rounds, and sure enough, within 2 minutes, we'd caught 5. And then within 5 more minutes, we realized some other ones were missing, and they were out getting milkshakes or whatever they were not really supposed to be doing. Nothing. It wasn't what they were doing that was so bad. It was that they just broke the rules was what was the bad part. So Tuesday morning, I had already prepared the character development class and what we were going to talk about Monday night. God said, nope, we're going to change all that. So I kind of threw something together and Tuesday morning that I got there about 7:30, and I counted all the boys that were in trouble, which was 10. And we have red bar stools in our little reception area at the classroom, and I counted them, and it was 10. I was like, this is perfect. So I went and got 10 red, tall metal bar stools, and I set them in a row right in front of the class, facing the class. So, of course, when they all walked in, they were like, what's this about? They were trying to figure it out. And anyway, I said, we're going to change up how we do character development classes. And most of the time, it's not real spiritual. Sometimes we talk about God in our character development class. I said, but today it's going to be all about God and about the forgiveness that Jesus paid the price for us. So I started with who was God. Then I went into why God created us. And then I went into the fall of man and sin. Then I fast forwarded to Jesus, and I went through all that whole spin. And I told them about how Jesus had paid our debt and how Jesus was hung on the cross for something he didn't do and how he paid you and I's debt. And when I got through with that, and it was a little bit longer than that, I said, okay, guys, we unfortunately had 10 boys that broke the rule this week. And I'm going to call you one by one. Would you please come up to the front of the class and grace the rest of the class by sitting in one of these red chairs? So as I was calling their names, they went up there and sat down. And I said, but here's the deal, guys. I said, before I tell you what their punishment is, I want to know, is anybody willing to take it for them? So I went and stood behind this kid. He's 6'8", the first kid. And I put my hand on his shoulders and I said, is anybody willing to take this kid's punishment? And immediately Carson Willis in the back raised his hand and said, I'll take it. So I went to the next one. I'll take it. Went to the next one. And by the time I got to the 10th boy, we had 13 boys willing to take the punishment for 10 kids. And I explained, I said, guys, this is a very, very small analogy of what Christ did for us. But these boys, you're taking their punishment and you didn't do anything wrong. I said, y'all have got this amount of time to get to this place and back by running as fast as you can. And if you're not back, it's going to be a bad day for y'all 13. And boy, out the door they went, and they was running and running and running. And I immediately heard one of the kids that was in trouble that didn't have to run say, I'm going to buy him lunch today. And I turned around and I said, and you should. I said, but your debt's already been paid. He didn't do this expecting you to buy his lunch. He did this because he loves you. And I want you to understand that. And I hope this, whatever I did today, will bond this team like no other. And sure enough, the boys come running back in and they were about to die because they had a very short time to get to where they had to get to and back. And it was just silence in the room for a minute. And I hope that just short analogy got to somewhat sink through to them, and we'll see. I have a friend, some of y'all, I know Brian knows him, Adrian Dupree. He's been around for a long time. He goes all over the world preaching and evangelist. And he used to always have this saying. And the saying was, we do crazy things when we're in love. He would always say that. We do crazy things when we're in love. Like for most of us men, we'll do crazy things, right, when we're in love. We're like vacuuming the floor, washing the dishes. Because we do crazy things when we're in love. The best one is stopping by the store on your way home when you've worked a long day and you're just ready to get home and your wife goes, can you stop by the store and pick up some milk? And you're like, yes, honey, I can. And then by the time you get in the store, you got a text message, oh, and by the way, can you pick up these other 10 things? Why? Because we do crazy things when we're in love. In the last several weeks, we heard, why do we share the gospel? Where and when do we share the gospel? And who should share the gospel? Today, we're going to talk about what motivates us to share the gospel. And apparently today, and I don't want this to be a somber message, but apparently today, there's not a whole lot that motivates us to share the gospel. Because if you look at the statistics of how many Christians or people that call themselves Christians actually share the gospel, it's very, very few. My numbers could be off. I think it's like 80% of Christians don't actively share the gospel. And I didn't realize when I was doing this study that there were so many different types of love. Because being from Blackville, you already heard of one love, right? You love your mom and daddy, and you love your siblings most of the time. You love your dog. You love to play sports, but didn't realize that when I was doing this, there's like a bunch of loves. Now, there's 4 main ones we talk about today, but today it's agape love. It's the highest form of love, and it's the fatherly love that God our Father shows us and that we should be reciprocating to Him. So are we scared to share our faith? That's usually the number one answer. I'm scared. I'm nervous. I don't really know what to say. I don't know if I'll say the right words. Are we ashamed of sharing the gospel? Are we scared of persecution? See, in 2 Timothy, Paul says to Timothy, he encourages him not to be ashamed of the gospel and to embrace the suffering and persecution of sharing the gospel. See, I don't know, for me it took a while to sink in. If it wasn't for persecution, the gospel actually never would have been spread, right? See, in Acts 8, it says Stephen was stoned to death, and the next morning the believers scattered everywhere, preaching the good news about Jesus. They didn't denounce their faith. They didn't put it away. It didn't say they were scared to go somewhere else. It just says they went. Could you imagine that in our country today? If we were persecuted or stoned to death about our faith, we probably would shut down and close our doors and wouldn't say nothing to nobody. We wouldn't scatter and just go tell everybody. I hope we're bold enough that we would do that. In Mark 12:28 through 33, it says, one of the teachers of religious law was standing there listening to the discussion. He realized that Jesus had answered well, so he asked, of all the commandments, which is the most important? Jesus replied, the most important commandment is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is the one and only Lord. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, all your mind, and your strength. The second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. And then the teacher of religious law replied, well said, teacher, you have spoken the truth by saying that there is only one God and no other. And I know it is important to love him with all my heart, all my understanding, and all my strength, and to love my neighbor as myself. It says, you must love your Lord, your God, with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. See, the teacher's question could have sparked a controversy. Most of the time, that's what they were trying to do, is spark a controversy with Jesus, but he just summarized it very smoothly, right? It's very simple. Love God and love your neighbors. See, by Jesus' time, there was hundreds of laws. So we always just hear about the 10 Commandments, right? We don't hear about the 613 extra laws and all that they tried to abide by. And some people thought there was a distinguishing between the major laws and the minor laws. Some people thought there was no distinction at all between any of the laws. Some thought they were equally binding. See, God's laws are really, truly not burdensome. It's just practically two. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. So what motivates us to truly share the gospel? We do crazy things when we're in love. In Corinthians 13, 2 through 13, it says, if I had everything but didn't love others, what good would I be? And if I had the gift of faith so that I could speak to mountains and make it move, without love, I would be no good to anybody. If I gave everything I had to the poor and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it. But if I didn't love others, I would be no value whatsoever. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. Love does not demand its own way. Love is not irritable. It keeps no record of when it has been wronged. It is never glad about injustices, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Love will last forever, but prophecy and speaking in unknown languages and special knowledge will all disappear. Now we know only a little, and even the gift of prophecy reveals little. But when the end comes, the special gifts will all disappear. It's like this. When I was a child, I spoke, thought, and reasoned as a child does. But when I grew up, I put away childish things. Now we see things imperfectly as a poor mirror, but then we will see everything with perfect clarity. All that I know is partial and incomplete, but then I will know everything completely, just as God knows me now. There are three things that will endure: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. See, love involves an unselfish service to others, and to show it means that we care. Faith is the foundation and content of God's message. Hope is the attitude and focus. And love is the action. It says when faith, hope are in line, when faith and hope are in line, you are free to love completely because you understand how God loves. See, it says in here, love is more important than all the spiritual gifts exercised in the church today. See, I often hear folks say that I just don't have any spiritual gifts. I was one of those for a long time. I just don't have any spiritual gifts. And then somebody pointed out, Gil, but you love people. You've never met a stranger, as Tina would say. You've never met a stranger. Last night, within 30 seconds, I'd met the neighbors as they was backing the U-Haul up, and 20 minutes later, we were going to have dinner with them. And that's just, I guess, a good gift in a lot of ways, but sometimes it's come back to bite me. But you have a spiritual gift if you can love others. Why? Because we do crazy things when we're in love. Luke 14:26 says, if you want to be my follower, you must love me more than your own father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters. Yes, more than your own life. Otherwise, you can't be my disciple. So Jesus teaches about the cost of being a disciple. Actually, in verse 27, the next verse, he says, you must carry your own cross. See, a lot of times growing up, I wanted my parents to carry the cross, or I wanted to try to have their faith or their love. And that's not how it works. Now, it's very important, I think, as fathers and mothers, that we should share our faith and talk about Christ in the home. But at the end of the day, we all have to choose to carry our own cross. Jesus is saying in Luke 14 that your love for him should look like hate compared to anybody else. And I know this sounds crazy, the word hate, but he's basically saying if you love me so much compared to your wife and your children and everybody else in your family, maybe not your in-laws, but anyway, if you love me so much, your love for them should be such a drastic difference that it almost looks like hate. He's not telling you to hate your family. He's just saying, do you love me that much? And if so, it should be that big of a difference. So what motivates us to share the gospel? Because we do crazy things when we're in love. See, there's a song that's just recently come out by Cody Carnes that said, and it sounds like it'd kind of be my title because it said, ain't nobody love me like Jesus. Sound like he'd be from Blackville. Ain't nobody love me like Jesus. And the lyrics say, I got a story too good to hide. I was a blind man wondering until I saw the light. Yeah, I got a story I can't deny. I'm living, breathing miracle, and I just got to testify. Ain't nobody love me like Jesus. See, when ain't nobody love us like Jesus, and we truly love Jesus, then we can't hide it. We have to testify. It has to come out of us, right? People should see us everywhere we go that something's different about us because how we treat others. See, if we love Jesus like we say we love Jesus, we all have a story to tell. Why? Because we do crazy things when we're in love. In Deuteronomy 6:4-5, it says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. See, when we love God completely and care for others as we care for ourselves, then you have fulfilled the intent of the Ten Commandments. See, to love, we have to set our sights on Him, which in turn sets our sights on he, she, y'all, instead of me, myself, and I. Then we truly understand what love is, because we do crazy things when we're in love. Ephesians 5:1-2 says, follow God's example in everything you do because you are his dear children. Live a life filled with love for others. Paul said to follow God's law in everything that we do. Follow God's example in everything that we do. See, it's easy to love others who love us, right? That just comes naturally. You love me, I love you. That's easy. But how about the people that pull our strings and just really get on our nerves, or somebody that's hurt us, or somebody that's betrayed us? That's tough. Y'all have heard me tell the example up here, I think before, of Tommy Arthur Lee Singleton. I'll never forget the name until the day I die 30 years ago, when I was trying to take him into custody. My leg gets broken. 2 surgeries later, I despised this man. And then it took 10 or 15 years later to realize, and y'all have heard this, I think, had that not have happened, I would have never met Tina. Because for 3 months we passed each other in college. We wouldn't say a word to each other until I come back the next day with a broken leg and a cast, and she finally had the nerve to break the ice and ask what happened. And then that started it. And so if Tommy walked in that door today, I would love to tell him I love him. We might not hang out and go to lunch afterwards, but I would tell him I love him. See, in Luke 19, we see Jesus entering into Jericho, and he calls out a wee little man. Who's the wee little man? Who? Zacchaeus. Y'all remember the song growing up? Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he, that he had to climb up in the sycamore tree. So Jesus is coming into Jericho, and Zacchaeus is trying to see him, but he's too short. You know, he's kind of height deprived like me, and he's trying to see Jesus, and he climbs up in a sycamore tree, and Jesus sees him. Now, Zacchaeus wasn't well liked because he was a Jew that was working basically for the Roman government as a tax collector. And he was cheating people out of their money, taking way more than he was supposed to. But Jesus didn't always go to the rich and famous, right, or the people that were well liked. He always went to the folks that were burdensome, down and out. The lone wolf, or the runt of the litter, is what attracted Jesus. So he calls Zacchaeus out of the tree, says, take me to your house for dinner. Of course, all the other people were grumbling, why would he go with this guy, this tax collector, and this low life guy? Why would he do that? Because that's what Jesus does. So we often love those who are loved by others and not those who are not. But through that interaction with Jesus and Zacchaeus demonstrated the interchange by an outward action. So much so that he gave back what he had taken, and 4 times more than he had taken, to make it right. Could you imagine taking more money than you were supposed to, and then you just self-report, and you go, I'm so sorry and forgive me, but you still don't want to give the money back, right? You still want to hold on to that. I'll start anew tomorrow. But why does Zacchaeus do that? Because we do crazy things when we're in love. Ephesians 4:2-3 says, be humble and gentle, be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. Make allowances for each other's faults. Boy, we can't do that in our society today, can we? We can't make no allowances for nobody's faults. Why not? It's usually because we don't have patience. If I had written the 10 Commandments, I think patience would probably be somewhere in the top 3. Thou shalt have patience. And I used to be the world's worst at it. Matter of fact, this week, Tina, maybe you remember, she probably does remember this conversation. I called her, and throughout the day, we were just kind of catching up on the day, and didn't realize she was at the classroom with 70 boys in the background. And she said, do we have any plans tonight? And I said, no, I was just going to kind of work on the sermon. And she said, what? And I said, I'm just kind of working on the sermon. And again, she said, what? And I kind of yelled it back to her, what I was doing. You know, I was yelling as I was telling her about preparing for a sermon. And she's like, well, you didn't have to be so rude or whatever. And I was like, well, I said it 3 times, you know. She said, well, I got 70 boys in the background. I couldn't hear you. And I was like, okay, bye. You know, we hung up. And immediately I realized I did not handle that situation properly. In our kind of a way of, saying I'm sorry, sometimes I do call her back, say I'm sorry, I sent her this, kissy face emoji, and immediately she sent me one back, and we were good. But we didn't have patience. But the reason, probably 10 or 15 years ago, I probably wouldn't have sent that emoji, and it stirred all day, right? And by the time I got home, it really turned into something big. But I have learned how to put my wife first and how you love others. And that's why I sent her the emoji. Because we do crazy things when we're in love. 1 John 4:12 says, no one has ever seen God, but if we love each other, God lives in us, and his love has been brought to full expression through us. See, John is not telling us how many people to love. He's just saying love the people that you already know, that you're already in contact with. He's not saying don't love a stranger. That's not what he's saying. He's like, but you don't have to go out and try to find all these people to love, because if you'll love, God will bring them to you. If you're an introvert and you're scared to talk to people, I am not at all. I've never met a stranger, so it's kind of odd to me that people that are, but I get it. I know plenty of people that are. And that's okay. That's what God made you. But I promise you, if you will love those folks, I think Scott said it last week at the end of the message when we had a little Q&A. He said, God will bring them to you. You don't have to search them out. Because we do crazy things when we're in love. 1 Peter 4:8 says, most important of all, continue to show deep love for each other, for love covers a multitude of sin. See, verse 9 goes on to say, share your home and a meal cheerfully with others. Man, there's no better way in the world than to share your love with somebody than having them sit at your kitchen table. Now, maybe you won't go to the extremes that I do sometimes, because I remember this. I thought about this last night. I was at some kind of conference. I don't remember what it was, but it was downtown. It was about 15 years ago. And me and this dude just hit it off at this conference, just immediately. And I mean, you would have thought we were best pals after 20 minutes. And they had a long way to drive back home. And I said, where y'all staying? He's like, I think we're going to try to push through and get home tonight. And I was like, dude, y'all can stay at my house. And he's like, really? And I was like, yeah. I was like, no problem at all. Y'all. And it was him and another guy. And I was like, y'all can stay at my house. No problem at all, man. We'd love to have you over. We have, we'll move the both boys in one room. Y'all stay there. And he's like, all right, great. Well, I see him turn around. He goes, hey guys. He said we could stay at his house. It was 6 guys. And I called Tina up and I was like, we're in trouble. I was like, I thought it was 2. It's 6 of them. Get every pillow, every blanket, every cushion, every couch, every recliner. And we have got to try to figure this out. So we had 6 people come to our house that I had met an hour earlier. And we stayed up to, I think, 2 or 3 o'clock in that morning just talking. And it was a blast. Now, I would encourage you maybe do a little more research on these people than I did. I made sure I had my, gun staggered through the house where I could get to them real quick. But until you have had someone sitting at your table, when you truly let somebody come to your table and sit down and eat with them, they start to understand how much that you love them. Because we do crazy things when we're in love. John 15:12 says, I command you to love others the way I love you. See, it's Jesus speaking here. What was the way Jesus loved us? So much that he was willing to hang on a cross for you and I. Kind of just like I shared with the boys, the P27 boys at the discipline problem, that he took our punishment because he loved us so much. So Jesus even asked God the night before the crucifixion, I believe was right. Is there any way this can pass over me? Is there any way that I don't have to go through this? But if not, I'll do it. Why did he do it? Because he loved us that much. You may see on the screen here in a minute pop up. Do y'all remember Kenneth and Monica? So Kenneth and Monica are from Uganda, is that right? Uganda, Africa. They came here a few months ago, stayed a couple of months to try to raise support to go back. They're missionaries to reach their people. And it didn't dawn on me, literally to this week, that Kenneth and Monica are missionaries in their own country. We don't hear that, do we? We don't consider ourselves missionaries in the United States, in our own country, in our own backyard in West Columbia. We never probably crossed our mind that we are missionaries in our own country. We always think you've got to go to some third world country. Now, their country, don't get me wrong, where they live, I think, is a little bit of city, and they've got some amenities that people that just a couple hours away still living in tribes and bushes and no running water, still spears and bow and arrows. And I get that. It's almost like they're in a different country, but it's actually, Uganda is actually their country. Kenneth and Monica are missionaries in their own country. I want us to be missionaries in West Columbia, Casey, Springdale, Lexington, South Carolina. And if you're called to go outside of these borders or called to go outside of these walls, I'd love to go to Uganda or go visit Pablo's family where they're at in Ecuador. I'd love to. But just because that's our love and we think that's where we're supposed to go doesn't forsake us from being missionaries right here outside of the walls of this church or this school. John 3:16. I hope somebody can recite that for me out loud right now. Oh, we got a bunch of people. Good. See, Jesus is saying in this verse, I think we take it for granted so often, but Jesus is saying in this verse, for my Father loved you so much that he gave me, meaning Jesus, to die for you, that whosoever believes in me, Jesus, would have eternal life. No more, no less. We always try to figure out there's something attached to that. It just says God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever believeth in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. So we've said this verse so many times, or it's our go-to verse when we get put on the spot, right? That we've forgotten how powerful those words are. See, when you hear it, for God so loved the world, he gave his only Son. Now, I'll tell you this. I would say everybody in here, and there's a few new folks I've never laid eyes on this morning, that if somebody walked through that door right now with a weapon, if William didn't get to him first, and I didn't get to him second, maybe a few others get to him third or fourth, I would take a bullet for any of you guys in here without a question. And I only know some of you. I didn't even think about it till I was preparing the sermon. For 25 years, I strapped on a bulletproof vest, 2 guns, a gun in the front seat of the car, a gun in the trunk to go serve and protect those that I had never met in my life and was willing to die for them. But I can promise you this. The 2 boys that normally sit right there, the ones in Florida in college and the other ones out of town this weekend, there's no way in God's green earth would I let either one of them sacrifice themselves for you. Just being honest. I would. But I would not sacrifice my boys for you guys. I guarantee I can ask any of the dads in here, would you allow your son to be sacrificed to save everybody else? No way. No shot. I think I can ask most of the dads or the men in here, would you sacrifice yourself for everybody in here? I think in a heartbeat. So when you read John 3:16 in the future, I really want us to understand when I say us, I'm talking about me because I took it for granted for many years of what John 3:16 truly means. That God so loved us that he gave his Son. And when I put it in perspective like that, would I be willing to give up my son? Absolutely not. But when we understand that verse fully, we would do crazy things because we're in love. In Matthew 28, it says, it's commanded in the Great Commission to make disciples. You can't make disciples without sharing the gospel. It says it's commanded. It didn't say it's suggested. It didn't say we maybe should at times. Or if you're an extrovert like me, you're supposed to share it, but if you're an introvert, you're off the hook. That's not what it says. It says you're commanded to share the gospel. See, you can have good friends, or you can make good friends. You can have good hunting partners. You can have good fishing partners. But you'll never make them a disciple unless you share the gospel. See, I think about it when I became a trooper, went through all this training, and then when you got out, you had to go through 2 or 3 more months of somebody training you. And then you still had to check in every so many days to make sure your reports are right before they would fully turn you loose on your own. Because somebody had to teach us, somebody had to train us, somebody had to be with us, somebody had to correct us if we got out of line. That's what we have to do with other people. We have to teach them. We have to share the word with them. We have to communicate with them. Sometimes every once in a while we have to pull them back in. But the only way they'll ever know how to share the gospel is if somebody has shared it with them. I think about in sports, Jeffrey, a good friend of mine right here, we played baseball together. We had plays that we had to look by. Really, not so much at life. We'd just get up there and hit the ball and run and try to, more like that. But in today's baseball, somebody had to teach us, right? Somebody had to train us. I think about these boys at the academy. They put hours upon hours upon hours upon hours. Some of these guys, or most of them, already committed to a D1 school, are already on the radar to be drafted. But yet they continue and continue and continue to put the work in day after day after day after day, even though they already know where they're going. See, I think a lot of us, we know where we're going, so we quit putting the work in. Because we think, hey, I'm good. I got fire insurance. I'm good. And we don't think about the ones who don't. See, we will share almost anything with anybody except the gospel. There's a quote by Lee Wallace. It says, riches takes wings, comfort vanishes, hope withers away, but love stays with us. Love is God. This was a quote by Lee Wallace. He was the governor of New Mexico in the late 1800s, was a high-ranking officer. Short and sweet. Riches take wings, comfort vanishes, hope withers away, but love stays with us. Love is God. We're wrapping things up here. So what motivates us to share the gospel? It's supposed to be love. Do we truly love others? I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of not sharing the gospel. I'm tired of letting opportunities slip by when I go, And don't get me wrong, there's going to be times where you just don't meet somebody and 30 seconds later start beating them over the head with the gospel, right? Then there may be an opportunity where I'm going to never see this guy again or this person again, and I need to figure out how to kind of share the gospel with them. But again, most people don't care what. They don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. But there are opportunities that we miss every day to just say something in kindness and out of love that they start going, there's something different about him or her. Because I can promise you, when I was a trooper, I shouldn't say, I got along with everybody, nobody shunned me or nothing, but they didn't want to hear about the gospel, or if I invited them to church, it was always an excuse or whatever, and I never tried to pull anybody away from their church, but the moment there was a crisis that happened in the highway patrol, Gil, would you say the prayer? Gil, would you do the funeral? Gil, would you do this? And I'm not patting myself on the back. I mean, you think about the football incident we had a month ago, right? Everybody was praying. Everybody. The whole stadium was praying. The whole country was praying. Probably half the world was praying. But I'm concerned, had that incident not happened and somebody said, hey, we're going to take a few minutes and pray during the football game. Or if the announcer would have prayed on live television like he did when the incident happened, he probably would be looking for a job today. See, Jesus also says, we were kind of talking about this morning, that everybody that you share the gospel with or talk to about the Lord is not going to just openly just take it in and go, oh my goodness, where do you go to church and let me hear more and more and more. They probably are going to kind of push you away, and you can only chase them so long I've done that for a long time. I chase people and chase them and chase them and chase them to the point where you're going, what did Jesus do? Dust your feet off and move on to the next one. See, if you look at the first letter of love, it's an L, right? Now, it's not loser. Remember back when we were in high school, somebody knew what that meant. You were a loser. That's not where we're at today. It stands for love, right? An L is the first shape of the letter of the word love. And if you look at it this way, the 2 commandments says, love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So if you ever forget what love looks like, just do this. And it should remind you of the greatest commandment. See, to the world, you may be one person, but to that one person, you may be the world. So I'm going to ask you, are you willing to do crazy things because you're in love? Let's pray. God, we love you. We thank you for what you do for us each and every day. And so many times I'm sure we don't even realize it. That when we traveled hundreds of miles during the day and we've been safe, that we should give you the honor and the glory, God. The days that we just miss opportunities to share your gospel, God, that you remind us what your Son did for us, is that he loved us so much that he gave his life for us. God, I pray throughout of our days next week and continued on that we hold our hand up in an L shape and be reminded that you love us, and that if we love you with all of our being and love others, that we will do crazy things when we're in love, like coming out of our comfort zone, helping a stranger in need, opening the doors to our house and have somebody over for dinner. As strange as that sounds in today's society with the diseases and the sickness that's gone on the last couple of years and the fear and the trembling, God, you don't give us a spirit of fear. That we'll open our doors, share a meal with a stranger, and love them because we do crazy things when we're in love. In your holy name.